Welcome to Wikipedia Reviewed, the only show on YouTube where we don't just read you the Wikipedia articles, we review them on our very scientific system, where they're scored based upon factualityness, comprehensiveness, and, most importantly, vibes. So with that out of the way, let's get into the New England Vampire Panic. So it looks like right away we're gonna get an image. And this one says, believe in vampires. Rhode Islanders who are sure that they exist. Instances have been told where the living have been attacked and preyed upon by representatives of an unseen world. What a fucking sick line that is. Looks like the picture there, I'm not seeing a vampire unless later me point out the vampire if there's one there. Ooh, no, there's no vampire there because this says a representative of the anti-vampire party, which I have no idea so far when this is set or what's going on, but this is good. I don't know why there's an anti-vampire party, but I'm glad. Okay, so it turns out this is a satirical cartoon from the Boston Daily Globe accompanying an article describing superstitious beliefs in rural Rhode Island. And I'm personally looking forward to finding out what those beliefs are. Are we gonna get some Jersey Devil level situation going on here? The New England Vampire Panic was a reaction to the outbreak of tuberculosis in the late 18th and 19th centuries throughout Rhode Island, eastern Connecticut, southern Massachusetts, Vermont, and other areas of the New England states. Consumption, tuberculosis, was thought to be caused by the deceased consuming the life of their surviving relatives. What? Who out there confirmed this? Is this like in a medical journal from the time? Was there someone out there who did an experiment where they're like, yeah, no, eat your dead relatives? Why does it have to be relative? Can it be someone you don't know? Will they not get consumption? Will they get something else instead? Maybe they'll get hunger? I don't know. Bodies were exhumed and internal organs ritually burned to stop the diseased vampire from attacking the local population and to prevent the spread of the disease. I mean, I guess it makes sense in relation, but not sure we get the vampire definition yet, because that's in quotes. When was Bram Stoker's Dracula written? I don't know about vampires or Draculas before that. Quite spooky indeed. Notable cases provoke national attention and comment, such as those of Mercy Brown in Rhode Island and Frederick Ransom in Vermont. Tuberculosis was known as consumption at the time, as it appeared to consume an infected person's body. It is now known to be a bacterial disease, but the cause was unknown until the late 19th century. The infection spreads easily among a family. Thus, when one family member died of consumption, other members were often infected and gradually lost their health. People believe that this was due to the diseased tuberculosis sufferer draining the life from other family members. So this is like Nosferatu, right? Because they all started dying of diseases and shit in that one, right? Wait, was it just the vampire killing them? I don't know. All that I remember from that is there wasn't a full screen cock shot. Let's get back to tuberculosis though. Maybe we'll see the connection eventually. The belief that consumption was spread in this way was widely held in New England and in Europe, in an attempt to protect the survivors and ward off the effects of consumption. Bodies of those who had died to the disease were exhumed and examined. The corpse was deemed to be feeding on the living if it was determined to be unusually fresh, especially if the heart or other organs contained liquid blood. Does the heart not contain blood when you die normally? After the culprit was identified, there were a number of proposed ways to stop the attacks. The most benign of these was to simply turn the body over in its grave. Why would you turn the body over? Would they not be able to turn over in the grave, and so therefore you have trapped the vampire? Where is this coming from? No wonder the Boston Globe was mocking these people. In other cases, families would burn the fresh organs and rebury the body. Occasionally, the body would be decapitated. Affected family members would also inhale smoke from the burned organs or consume the ashes in a further attempt to cure the consumption. What the hell? No! No! Do not smell burning corpse! Do not smell burning organs! What is wrong with you people? Oh my God. One of the early cases in the late 18th century was that of Justice Ford, the eminent Yale-educated pastor of the Congregationalist Church at Bleachertown, Massachusetts, in the western part of the state near Springfield. He served in the church for nearly 6 decades by the time of his death. Okay, don't know why we need to specify that, but cool, sure, yeah, I like it. Like that little detail. By July 1788, he and his wife had lost 3 daughters to consumption, including Martha Ford Dwight. She had died in 1782 at the age of 23. 2 more were ill, including daughter Mercy, who had begun hemorrhaging. He wrote in a letter, "This morning, July 21st, opened the grave of my daughter Martha, who had died, the last of my 3 daughters, almost 6 years ago. On opening the body, the lungs were not dissolved, but had blood in them, though not fresh but clotted. The lungs did not appear as we would suppose they would in a body just dead, but a far nearer state of soundness than could be expected. The liver, I am told, was as sound as the lungs. We put the lungs and liver in a separate box, and buried it in the same grave, 10 inches or a foot above the coffin. Their daughter Mercy died in January 1789, though the other children survived their illness." That's a horrible thing to write down. I mean, to see your own child like that, and that's absolutely horrible shit, man. And now we're getting to a list of documented victims. 1793, Rachel Harris Burton. 1770 to 1790. Manchester, Vermont. Congregational deacon Captain Isaac Burton exhumed his first wife Rachel in an attempt to save his second wife Hilda Burton, who was dying. The effort failed and Hilda died in September 1793. 1810, unnamed New Ipswich resident, New Ipswich, New Hampshire. Dr. John Clow of New Ipswich, New Hampshire, reported in The Influence of the Mind on Physical Organization in the Boston Medical and Surgical Journal. In connection with these superstitions, I cannot omit to mention a circumstance which occurred in this town, New Ipswich, not 30 years since, and similar occurrences probably occurred in many other New England towns. This was disinterring a human body, which belonged to a family all strongly predisposed to consumption, for the purpose of removing the heart, which was to be burned, the ashes of which were considered a sovereign remedy to those of the family who were still living and might be afflicted with the same disease. This only illustrates the fact that those elements of character which had such a magic sway over the minds of men in ancient times have not ceased altogether to influence the community in our comparatively enlightened day. Case 3, date 1816 to 1817. Samuel Saladay, location Skidoo County, Ohio, not New England. A strange superstition. The family of Philip Saladay came from Switzerland, bought and settled on a lot in the French Grant. Soon after the opening of the county for settlement, hereditary consumption developed itself in the family sometime after their location in the county. The head of the family and the oldest son had died of it, and others began to manifest symptoms. When an attempt was made to arrest the progress of the disease by a process which had been practiced in the numerous instances, but without success, they resolved to disinter one of the victims, take his entrails and burn them in a fire prepared for the purpose in the presence of the surviving members of the family. This was accordingly done in the winter of 1816 to 1817, in the presence of a large concourse of spectators who lived in the surrounding neighborhood, and by Major Amos Wheeler, of Wheelsburg. Samuel Saladay was one of the disinterred and offered up as a sacrifice to stop, if possible, the further spread of the disease. But like other superstitious notions with regard to curing diseases, it proved no avail. The other members of the family continued to die off until the last one was gone, except George. Case 4, 1817. Name, Frederick Ransom. 1797 to 1817. Location, South Woodstock, Windsor County, Vermont. Notes, see below. What? Case 5, 1843. John Barber, 1788 to 1843. Location, Griswold, New London County, Connecticut. In 1990, children playing in a gravel pit unearthed human skulls, leading to discovery of an old farm burial ground that belonged to the Walton family. Oh, that's terrifying for the children. Most of the skeletons were unremarkable, but one was in a coffin marked with JB55 and tacks on the lid. The skeleton appeared to have been exhumed and reburied approximately 5 years after death, with its head and femurs removed and placed on the chest in the manner of a skull and crossbone. That's ominous as shit. The ribcage had been broken open, presumably to remove the heart. Later DNA research suggested that the skeleton was that of farmer John Barber, with the tacks on the coffin lid, therefore his initials and age of death. A nearby coffin was similarly marked NB13, likely his son, Nathan Barber, who died in 1826, aged around 13. This identity was confirmed through further DNA research by Pardon Nano Labs in 2022. That's wild that we're still getting updates on the New England vampire panic. Case 6. Date, circa 1860s. Name, anonymous sibling. Location, Boston, Suffolk County, Massachusetts. In 1873, Dr. Lucy Abel reported to the Massachusetts State Board of Health, "I should be sorry to be understood as recommending drunkenness as a cure for consumption, but I have known several instances where nearly all of the family, from 5 to 9 children, have successively died of phthisis. Finally, one of the boys, from sheer desperation, took to excessive drinking of alcoholic stimulants. These boys are now past middle life and enjoying good health when last heard from." That's wild. In 2 families, not less than 5 or 6 victims, and each were carried off by consumption. In each, there was always one sick, and a short time before death, another would be prostrated. In one family, they resorted to that horrible relic of superstition of burning the heart, etc., of the dead, and their ashes were swallowed by the survivors in the hopes of the fatal demons would be exorcised from the family, but it did not avail. But another son fell, a victim, and then the alcoholic treatment was tried not as an expedited remedy, but as a means of forgetfulness of impending doom. And no deaths in the family, to my knowledge, since occurred. Case 7, 1892, Mercy Lena Brown. 1872 to 1892. Location, Exeter, Washington County, Rhode Island. Notes, Mercy Brown vampire incident. Dramatic. Frederick Ransom of South Woodstock, Vermont, died of tuberculosis on 14th of February, 1817 at the age of 20. His father was worried that Ransom would attack his family, so he had him exhumed and his heart burned on a blacksmith's forge. Ransom was a Dartmouth College student from a well-to-do family. It was unusual that he should fall victim to the vampire panic, which was most common among less educated communities. And hey, look, sometimes you go to college and you get a degree and you have a, master's or a doctorate, but hey, you can still be a fucking moron, Just saying. Now, for the Marcy Brown vampire incident, and it looks like we have a shot of her tombstone right here. One of the most famous cases is that of Mercy Lena Brown. Mercy's mother contracted consumption, which spread to the rest of the family, moving to her sister, her brother, and finally to Mercy. Neighbors believed that one of the family members was a vampire who had the illness. 2 months after Mercy's death, her father, George Brown, who did not believe that a vampire was to blame, reluctantly permitted others to exhume the bodies of his family. They found that Mercy's body showed little decomposition, had fresh blood in her heart, and had turned in the grave. This was enough to convince the villagers that Mercy Brown was the cause of consumption. The heart of this exhumed body was burnt, mixed with water, and given to her surviving brother to drink in order to stop the influence of the undead. The cure was unsuccessful. That absolutely is horrible for everyone involved. I mean, especially her father. He didn't even believe that it was the cause, and he reluctantly agreed to it, and then his son died afterwards. I mean, it's just one thing after another. Henry David Thoreau wrote in his journal of September 26, 1859, "The savage in man is never quite eradicated. I have just read of a family in Vermont whose several of its members, having died of consumption, just burned the lungs and heart and liver of the last deceased in order to prevent any more from having it." When rural Rhode Islanders moved west into Connecticut, locals perceived them as uneducated and vicious, which was primarily due to the Rhode Islanders' beliefs in vampirism. Newspapers were also skeptical, calling the belief in vampirism an old superstitious and a curious idea. That's an odd way to put this practice, because this is a horrible and tragic thing that keeps happening, and to call it a curious idea feels a little not great. While the press dismissed this practice as superstition, the burning of organs was widely accepted as folk medicine in other communities. In Woodstock, where local belief was still present, towns report of hundreds of onlookers attending the burnings of Frederick Ransom's heart. No. Okay, so now we're going on to terminology. It's unlikely that the disease would have been known as vampires by their affected families, because the word was not in common use in the community at that time. However, the term was used by newspapers and outsiders at the time due to similarity with contemporary vampire beliefs in Eastern Europe. So, how close is this to Bram Stoker? Is this tied at all? Is it way earlier? Is it before? I just don't know the history of the word vampires. The beliefs were very different from the vampires portrayed in modern popular culture. Michael Bell conducted an anthropological study of the phenomenon in New England. He rejected the modern narrative. No credible account describes a corpse actually leaving the grave to suck blood. And there is little evidence to suggest that those involved in the practice were referred to as vampirism, or to be suspected corpses as vampires, although newspaper accounts use this term to refer to the practice. See also Salem witch trials, which I think we all know about. And then the Jewett City vampires. Hold on, what are those? I'm gonna click that. The Jewett City vampires were thought to be the cause of an incident surrounding the Ray family, a large farming family of Griswold, Connecticut, in the 1840s and 50s, who upon the death of multiple family members, they were plagued by vampires, and in 1854, disinterred the dead relatives and burned the bodies to protect themselves. Now I'm noticing in these references that they mostly look good, but there's one that says something about a real vampire stalker? Well, that's quite disappointing. It's just an interview with the guy who's talking about the historical thing. I thought we were going to get some real modern day person who's believing in this. And after looking at the talk page, it doesn't look like there's that much on it. But I have some complaints with this. I have some critiques. And for that, let's review it. So first off, this factuality. And for that one, I feel that everything was solid. It's all thumbs up here. No citations needed. No big issues. I didn't see any random sources cited. It looked like everything was fairly good. Nothing seemed to randomly veer off in a random direction with it. So, factuality, we get big ass thumbs up. That's what I rank. The big ass thumbs up of Nosferatu. And then, for comprehensiveness, I would give it the definition of a vampire at the time. I don't know where it comes from. And I feel like that was the biggest issue with this article is I don't know where the vampire terminology is coming from and how it relates to a wider belief. It said it was taken from Eastern European things, but the widest belief that I know about it personally is with, Dracula's. I don't know how tied into it is. I don't know, what these people, the journalists, were gathering from these other sources. How prevalent was it? Why are they calling it this? What did contemporary people at the time actually call this event? I don't know any of these. And I would really like to know that more context. I also want to know a bit more of how the actual families themselves felt about this and how they processed everything. I would like some accounts from them, actually, if that exists. And then as well, maybe a few more pictures of the actual locations that this happened. I know it's not going to add much, but having some central sites in the article like that might help it a bit. And then that finally brings us to vibes. And the vibes of this, the vibes of this aren't great. The vibes of this are a family all dying from tuberculosis. It's not a fun time. It's serious stuff where people are going through very difficult things. And I really do wish we got to actually hear their accounts and hear what they actually went through. Because I think this would be very interesting, especially from Marcy Brown, her father. And, I just wish that we got a bit more into the human personal story of all of these. So with that, I think we're finally done here today. And I want to say, please, please, please go watch another video. It's the thing that YouTube relies on the most for actually recommending this. And I really need it. And if you're not going to watch another video from this channel, you've seen them all, please go watch The Berserker's Rage on Antiquarian Archive. I am desperate for views, but I'm not going to beg for it. That's not begging. That's me asking kindly because you're an amazing person. Bye!